Tsavo East Reserve, mid-morning. A lion cub lies motionless in the dust beside a wind-stripped acacia stump, its ribs showing with each shallow breath. The soil around its body is disturbed by paw marks, small ones that loop in confused circles, then vanish. A slow trickle of flies gathers near the edges of its ear and tail. Its back leg is twisted oddly beneath its flank. There's no sign of a lioness nearby. No movement, no roar, only the still weight of sun and silence. Duma does not step forward at first. He watches from 30 feet, crouched low by the edge of the track, hand resting on the radio clipped to his vest. He's seen many cubs, many abandoned young, but this one doesn't fit the pattern. Too clean. No signs of scavenging, no trail of blood. The cub's eyes open once, then shut again. Not from sleep, from weakness. He moves slowly now, bootsteps careful, measured. Each shift of weight presses into the red earth without sound. The cub doesn't lift its head. Its breathing is short, fast, and shallow. Duma kneels a meter away. He speaks only once under his breath. "Stay easy, little one." The cub doesn't stir. He sets down a soft cloth mat and slides it close. When he places a palm gently under the cub's chest, the animal winces but doesn't pull away. That's not a good sign. He radios it in, voice flat, factual. Single male cub. No visible adults. Hind leg appears fractured. Immediate extraction required. The reply is brief. 10 minutes out. The heat has begun to rise. The flies return. Duma wets a cloth from his canteen and drips water slowly beside the cub's mouth. The cub turns its head slightly, tongue flicking but missing. Duma doesn't force it. He waits. The cub tries again, this time reaching the wet patch, lapping once before stopping. It's not enough, but it's something. From the trees beyond the clearing, a vulture shifts position. Still no lioness, no scent of one, no call. That's what worries him. A mother would circle, a mother would return. This one hasn't. The vehicle arrives with a low hum. 2 vets jump down, their movements precise and quiet. One prepares the carrier. The other gently runs fingers along the cub's leg. "Clean break," she says. "Probably caught in something. A snare or bush hook." No blood, no swelling. Fresh. Less than a day old. The cub is lifted carefully. It cries out once, not loud, but sharp, a sound of confusion more than pain. Then it goes still again, resting against the towel inside the carrier. The back door shuts with a soft click. The engine hums low. As the vehicle turns, Duma stays behind for a moment. Scans the tree line again. Nothing. No tracks but the cubs. No scent but dust and sweat. No movement but the circling birds. He notes the coordinates in his book and marks the edge of the clearing with a single white flag. If she's out there, she'll know someone came. If she's not, the silence will stay. Inside the carrier, the cub blinks once, then curls in tighter. The vet adjusts the bandage around its leg and checks the drip line. They don't speak, not much to say. If he eats today, he might live. If not, they lose him by nightfall. By the time they pass the gate into camp, the sun has crested the ridge. Dust hangs in the air behind the truck like a memory trying not to settle. The carrier door was still open when the rustle came. Low brush to the east shifted once, then held. Duma turned first, hand resting lightly on the frame of the rescue truck. A figure stepped into view, slow, deliberate, and unmistakable. A lion, male, alone. His mane was patchy, dark at the shoulders, but sun-worn along the spine. One eye half shut. His front right paw dragged slightly across the dirt with every step. Not old, but not whole either. Gaunt enough to show hip bone. Duma didn't move. Neither did the vets. The lion stopped just 10 meters away. Not crouched, not tense. He didn't growl or lower his head. He simply stood, shoulders slumped, gaze steady. His ribs lifted shallow with each breath. Then he sat, The cub whimpered in the carrier behind Duma. Once. The sound was thin, weak, but it cut through the heat. The lion's ear twitched, that was all. No call in return, just stillness. One of the vets stepped beside Duma, whispering low. He's not claiming. He's not challenging. Duma didn't answer. His eyes stayed on the lion. This wasn't a pride male, not dominant, not defensive, but he wasn't wandering either. He had come for something. The cub moved again, a paw stretching out from under the towel. The lion's head tilted, barely. His back leg trembled beneath him, then settled. Duma crouched slowly, placed both hands on the carrier handle, and began to lift. The lion didn't flinch. No reaction. No shift in posture. He just watched. The truck door opened with a slow creak. The vets didn't rush. No one raised a voice. Duma slid the carrier inside and closed the latch with care. The lion remained in place, seated in the dust, eyes locked forward. The flies circled both him and the empty patch where the cub had lain. The sun kept rising. If the lion charged, they wouldn't be able to stop it. But he didn't. He didn't even adjust his weight. He just sat, as if waiting for the thing already gone. Duma stepped back into the driver's seat, gaze still fixed through the side mirror. The lion's figure blurred slightly with the heat ripple. The engine started. No roar, no tension. The truck rolled forward over the sand ridge and down toward the camp trail. Behind them, the lion remained. Still seated, still silent. By the time the dust had settled, the brush was quiet again. No second lion appeared, no call echoed, just one wounded male at the edge of a failed clearing, staring at the ground where a cub had lain and breathing like he'd run 100 miles. No one spoke on the drive back. The vets checked the cub's vitals, adjusted the IV drip, and held a hand gently over his chest to monitor rhythm. The leg would heal if the body survived the fever. But time was thin. If the lion was the father, he wouldn't have protected them. If he wasn't, he still came. And if he stayed, they'd have to decide what that meant. Because when a lion watches and doesn't move, not for threat, not for food, not for fear, something else is holding him still. By morning, the fever had not taken him. The cub lay curled on a burlap pad beneath the shade netting, ribs still showing, but his sides lifted more evenly now. The splint on his leg held firm. A shallow bowl of milk rested nearby, untouched. A vet had stayed the night. No cries, no thrashing, just quiet, shallow breaths. When Duma arrived at dawn, the cub stirred. Not much, just a faint twitch of the ears. Then, as the ranger approached the enclosure gate, the cub's head lifted. His eyes opened. The left one blinked slower than the right, but they found him. Duma knelt and dipped his hand into the shallow pan. He cupped a small amount and let it run slowly through his fingers. The cub watched, eyes following the motion, then leaned forward. His nose touched Duma's hand. The tongue followed. Cautious, unsteady. A few laps, then a pause, then more. Weak, but purposeful. The vet noted it softly. Good sign. Duma didn't respond. He just lowered his hand again. The cub drank. Outside the gate, the sun was beginning to lift above the acacia ridge. The team had set out feed trays and refreshed the water drums. Across the compound wall, something stirred. Not a sound. A movement. Duma turned, slowly rising. There, 10 meters beyond the back fence, just past the outer scrub, the lion stood. Closer this time. His weight leaned to the left. The bad leg dragged slightly but held. He wasn't crouched, wasn't hidden. He stood openly, exposed, calm, and watching. The same posture, same stare. His breath moved in faint plumes against the morning chill. Duma stepped back into the pen and pulled the gate gently shut. The lion didn't react. His head tilted slightly as if noting the gesture, then returned to its level place. There was no growl, no rumble, no call. Just presence. The cub whimpered then, short and thin but deliberate. A second later it turned its head toward the fence, nose lifting slightly toward the light. Duma froze. The lion's ears twitched forward. Inside the pen, the cub tried to rise. Its front legs pushed. The back leg failed. It slumped again, panting hard from the effort. But it had moved, not reflexively, not from pain, but with intention, toward the light, toward the shape beyond the fence. "He's aware," the vet said softly. "He knows something's there." Duma nodded. His fingers rested against the gate latch, not opening it, just feeling its shape. The lion remained still. 10 minutes passed. 15. The sun cleared the tree line. The cub closed its eyes, resting again, breath steady. No collapse, no relapse, just exhaustion now. That evening they monitored hydration and adjusted the bandage. The cub drank again, this time from a low bowl. His jaw trembled, but he did not stop. Duma stayed with him until the light thinned out behind the hills. Outside the fence, the lion hadn't moved. When the moon rose, Duma made one last round. The cub was asleep. Limp, but not labored. Breath soft. He turned toward the edge of the enclosure and scanned the dark scrub. The lion was gone, but in the dry dust just past the gate, fresh prints showed in the soil. Deep, deliberate. Leading forward, then stopping. No turn, no retreat. Just one standing place. If he had wanted the cub, he would have tried. If he had feared the humans, he would have vanished. But he had come again. Closer, quieter, and left nothing but his breath behind. By the third morning, the lion was still there. Same tree line, same distance. He hadn't moved more than a few feet in either direction. He never approached, never retreated, just stood or lay in the patch of worn earth beneath the fever tree. The ground around him had darkened from repeated weight. One trail of paw prints led in, none led out. Duma saw him at dawn again, crouched low by the eastern water barrel. The lion's shape was half-shadowed but clear. The vets had begun to whisper. Some thought he was injured beyond mobility. Others believed he was too starved to hunt. But none of them stepped closer, and none of them asked Duma to force him out. The cub inside the pen was healing. Slowly. He now stood for brief seconds without falling. The splint kept his weight uneven, but he moved. He followed the sound. He tracked scent. He responded when Duma arrived each morning, head lifting, tail tapping once against the cloth bedding. But each time a rustle came from outside the fence, the cub turned toward it. Not with fear, with awareness. Duma kept watch from the corner post, eyes trained on the same patch of tree line where the lion lay. The animal blinked, stood, shifted his weight, then sat again. Always facing the enclosure, never sleeping, never hunting, just watching. By noon, the air thickened with heat. Vultures passed overhead but did not land. There was no carcass, no blood, no scent to draw them. The lion did not respond to their shadow. He did not raise his head as they circled. He had stopped reacting. One vet approached Duma near the gate. "It's not normal. If he's dying, we can intervene. If he's lingering, we need to force distance. This is exposure." Her voice was quiet but firm. Duma didn't answer. He returned to the storage hut and came back with a shallow tin bowl. Without speaking, he carried it to the outer gate, walked a few steps beyond the threshold, and placed it just inside the dry grass. Then he stepped back. The lion did not move. His head followed, but his body stayed low. The bowl remained untouched. That night, the cub ate from a soft mash of boiled meat and milk. He chewed slowly, eyes flicking closed with each swallow. The vet noted improved hydration. No signs of infection. The splint would stay for another week. If recovery continued, release was possible. But not yet. Beyond the fence, darkness fell over the scrub. Still no movement. The next morning, the bowl of water was still full. No paw prints near it. No marks in the dust. Dumas refilled it anyway. Each hour that passed only made one thing clearer. The lion was not leaving. Not by force. Not from hunger. Not from time. 3 days under open sky, and not once had he closed his eyes. If he ran, he risked collapse. If he stayed, he might starve. But neither happened. He simply endured, as if the cub's breath was the only thing tethering him to the earth. And in that quiet, brutal stillness, no one had the heart to move him. That evening, the compound was quiet. The wind had dropped. No calls from the brush, no distant cracking of branches. Just the faint thrum of insects and the soft shuffle of the cub shifting in his sleep. Dumas stood at the rear fence, one hand resting on the latch. The lion was there again, half hidden behind the scrub, body sunk low to the ground. His eyes held no light now, just weight. The weight of days spent in silence, hunger, and waiting. Dumas looked once toward the enclosure where the cub stirred lightly on his mat. Then he looked back. The lion blinked slowly, breathing shallow, mouth closed. Not panting, just holding. He unhooked the far gate, quietly, no lift, no force, just the steady slide of metal loosening from wood. The gate swayed slightly with the night wind. Then stilled. Dumas left it open, stepped back, and walked away without looking behind him. No alarms were triggered, no lights flicked on. The compound slept. At first light, the sand near the open gate was marked with new tracks, heavy, pressed deep at the heel, not running, moving forward, not circling. The lion had entered just before dawn. No one saw him cross, but he had crossed. The cub was already awake, his head lifted as if waiting. When the lion reached the enclosure, he did not pace. He did not growl. He lay down beside the outer wall, spine pressed gently against the metal. He didn't look through the bars. He didn't try to reach in. He just settled. A few minutes later, Dumas arrived and stopped in his tracks. The cub was standing. Weak, swaying, but standing. His nose pointed directly toward the lion. No sound came from either animal. The cub stepped forward, one slow limb at a time, and collapsed just at the edge of the fence opposite where the lion waited. Dumas did not speak. He approached slowly and opened the gate again. The lion turned his head, watching. His eyes blinked once. Nothing more. The ranger pushed the outer enclosure door open just wide enough, then stepped away. The lion moved. No rush, no hesitation. He entered the pen, ducked low beneath the netting, and stepped forward until his shoulder passed the cub's flank. He paused, turned his head slightly, and lowered himself to the ground. The cub leaned into him, rested his head along the thick patch of fur behind the lion's foreleg, and exhaled. No one moved to stop it. The vets arrived minutes later, alerted by the motion sensor. They stood by the gate, eyes locked. No words. The lion looked at them once, not with warning but with acknowledgement. Then closed his eyes. The cub didn't stir. If they separated them, the cub might resist feeding. If they left them, the risk was obvious. A full-grown male in direct proximity. But there had been no aggression, no threat, just a choice made without sound. Dumas raised a hand, not to command, just to signal stillness. Inside the enclosure, the cub's breathing steadied. The lion's flank rose and fell with long, even rhythm. Neither animal moved again. If the lion had come for dominance, he'd have shown it. If he'd come for madness, he'd have broken the gate days ago. But he had waited in stillness without food or shelter, not to claim, not to conquer, but to be near. And now, with the cub beside him, he finally closed his eyes and slept. At first light, the compound was silent. Cooler air hung over the low scrub, and the soft sweep of wind brushed the tarp that shaded the pen. Dumas arrived before the others, boots crunching lightly across packed earth. He paused at the gate. Something was different. The enclosure door was ajar. Not wide, not broken, just slightly open as if nudged from inside. He stepped closer. Inside, the cub was alone. Not collapsed, not frantic, just lying still beside the empty mat, eyes open, ears gently twitching at the morning sounds. His breathing was strong now, deeper, more controlled. When he saw Duma, his tail lifted once and dropped. The ranger crouched slowly and scanned the ground. There was no sign of blood, no signs of struggle, only paw prints. They were everywhere. The lion had moved in the night, not rushed, not erratic, just deliberate, slow circles. The prints started near the cub's bedding, looped once toward the outer edge, and then, unmistakably, encircled the feeding station. Not to tip it, not to steal from it, just to acknowledge it. One complete round, as if inspecting, then back toward the exit. Duma stepped outside and followed the prints past the fence. They were fresh, clean-edged, not softened by wind. The depth showed weight had returned to the lion's steps. Less dragging, firmer ground contact. The trail led east through the grass toward the outer ridge. The vets arrived minutes later. The first to speak was the one who'd argued against opening the pen. "Is he gone?" she asked. Duma nodded. The cub looked toward them but didn't cry. He pushed himself to stand, shaky but upright. 3 full steps toward the feeding bowl. No collapse, no hesitation. When he began to eat, the vet watched carefully. "That's the best intake we've seen," she said, "and no signs of distress. Nothing spiked." She knelt down and adjusted the drip line, though it wasn't needed now. The cub pulled from the mash with more force than before. The bowl of water by the gate was half empty. No prints near it, just the drag mark of a lion's tail sweeping through the dust beside it. A low gesture, a non-verbal passing. They checked the perimeter. No breach, no damage. Nothing but a single trail of wide prints that passed once beside the compound wall, then veered off toward open land. "He waited," one of them whispered, then left on his own. Duma didn't respond. He walked to the back gate and stared out across the scrub. The sun was rising now, casting long shadows. In the dirt just beyond the gate, where the first prints had entered days ago, a deeper impression remained. Not a paw print, but the faint shape of where the lion's chest had once rested, pressed into the earth, as if he had laid there long enough for the soil to remember. Back inside the pen, the cub finished eating and curled into a patch of warming ground. Not in pain, just tired. They would observe him for another week. But the danger had shifted. No fever, no regression. Only healing now. If the lion had stayed longer, his strength might have failed. If he'd left sooner, the cub may not have stood again. But something in the timing had held. And now, in the quiet of that morning dust, all that remained were signs. Not of possession or power, but of presence. Circles in the soil. A gate left open. A cub is no longer alone. By late afternoon, the sky had begun to shift. The light dipped low across the scrub, turning dust gold and shadows long. Most of the team had left the compound for the day, but Duma remained, perched alone in the southern tower. It had become a quiet ritual. Watching, not expecting, but not turning away either. The cub had spent the day upright, more mobile now, placing partial weight on the splinted leg, navigating from mat to bowl with small determined steps. The drip line had been removed that morning. His breath held steady through effort. No signs of fatigue. He was ready. But they hadn't decided where or when. That choice, it turned out, was never theirs to make. As the sun pulled lower behind the ridge, Duma noticed movement in the brush line. Not fast, not cautious, just deliberate. 2 shapes side by side, one larger, one smaller. The lion came first. He walked slower than before, but with no limp. His body carried weight again. His coat, while still patchy in places, no longer hung in folds. His ribs no longer cast shadows. Beside him, half stepping, half hopping, came the cub. The sight didn't startle Duma. He didn't reach for his radio. He didn't rise. He just watched. The two moved as one unit, no distance between them. The lion glanced toward the compound but made no sound. The cub mirrored his pace, favoring the mended leg but never falling behind. They passed the open gate without pause. Duma had never locked it again. The lion led, slow and steady, along the edge of the fence. The cub followed, pausing only once to sniff the ground near his former pen. The scent was familiar. He lingered for a moment, then moved on. Duma watched them cross the clearing. No hesitation, no circling. They didn't head for cover. They didn't hide. They moved forward into the open veld like it had never been taken from them. A dry wind kicked dust across the path, and the cub blinked against it. The lion stopped and waited. Only when the cub stepped back in line did they continue. The sun touched the horizon. A red line spread across the field. Duma stayed silent. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, eyes tracking their movement without needing to record it. Some things didn't need reporting. If he called it in, protocol would follow. Observation, tagging, perhaps even forced separation. The cub was technically still under care, but care meant nothing if it couldn't follow the animal back into its world. So he didn't move, he didn't speak, he simply nodded, once, to no one but the sky. The pair reached the base of the far hill as light faded. The lion turned his head briefly, not toward the tower, not toward the pen, just toward the place where footprints were still held in dust. Then he continued walking. The cub followed without a sound. If the lion had returned alone, it would have been a risk. If the cub had tried alone, he wouldn't have survived. But together they moved, not quickly, not triumphantly, but with shared direction. And when the wind shifted, Duma caught the faintest trace of earth, fur, and something else he couldn't name. Something finished. At that moment, no decision was left to be made. The wild had reclaimed what was always its own. By dawn, the compound stood still. No sounds came from the holding pen, no rustle from within. Just the dry hush of early morning, when even the wind seemed to pause between breaths. Duma arrived before the others as he always did, walking with the quiet steps of someone who already knew what he wouldn't find. The gate to the enclosure was open. Not forced, not wide, just nudged. Enough for something small to pass through. The feeding bowl remained where it had been left, untouched since the evening before. The bedding lay flattened, its center still faintly warm. The cub was gone. Duma crouched by the edge of the pen. There in the dirt, half in shadow, was a single paw print, smaller than an adult's but pressed deep with clear definition. It rested beside his own boot print from the day before. The prints had touched, their edges overlapping slightly, like one had followed the other just after the fact. A few inches away, something pale caught the light. He leaned in. It was a bone, not whole, chewed down, worn at one end as if it had passed between two mouths, too small to be a lion kill. Likely an old training aid from the pen, long discarded. But someone had retrieved it, placed it there deliberately in the open, and next to it, barely visible in the sand, a thin strip of metal, curved and scratched with a broken edge. Duma lifted it gently. The tag was from a collar once used on orphaned calves, a relic meant for a goat that had never returned from the bush. He remembered losing it years ago. The engraving was nearly worn away, but it had surfaced now, dug up or carried or simply found again. He stood slowly, scanning the compound. No other prints, no signs of panic or struggle, just the open gate, the print, the bone, the tag. No trail to follow. One of the vets arrived behind him, breathtaking when she saw the empty enclosure. She stepped forward, paused, then asked, "He's really gone?" Duma didn't answer right away. He just handed her the tag. She turned it over in her hand, then looked back toward the open gate. The sun rose slowly, casting pale light over the eastern slope. In the distance, the grass shifted. Not violently, just enough to show that something had passed through recently. Maybe hours ago, maybe minutes. The breeze moved the taller reeds in long, slow waves. No shapes moved among them now. Inside the pen, the mat still held the faint indent of a curled body. Duma closed the gate behind him without locking it. He swept the dust once with his hand, then left the paw print untouched. If the cub had stayed, he might have healed completely under their watch. If the lion had waited longer, he might have been tracked and relocated, but neither outcome was theirs to shape. The choice had been made, and the wild had taken them back on its own terms. At the edge of the fence, Duma stopped and turned once more. The shallow paw print and his own boot print remained side by side, undisturbed. By midday, wind would fill them both,